Alcatraz. Things are changing in our world, and mobility is the first field where you can really see this.
European cities increasingly face problems when it comes to transport and to traffic. So it's really something that cities are trying to solve, and where the European Commission is also trying to help.
We are talking about European Mobility Week.
Mobility Week is the European Commission's awareness-raising campaign to actually tackle these challenges that cities and towns in Europe experience. You can find us on MobilityWeek.eu.
When we developed the website, our proposal was to create a sharing space where people can download all the information they need to organize a campaign to promote sustainable urban mobility.
The advantage of the .eu domain is it's a clear signal that this is a European website, and we are involving all European cities or European member states, people from all European countries, so it's the perfect domain for our campaign.
If you want to be involved in the European Mobility Week campaign, you have to go on MobilityWeek.eu and you will find all the information to start with your campaign.
We're doing 1,000 of the CDS bundles, the door bundle, and they're just the barrels filled up with water right now. They drop out of the planes. Sometimes they're water, sometimes they're ammo, sometimes it's MREs. It's a lot of practice and to see our actual ability. It's interesting. Canada's here, France is here, so it's interesting to see comparisons.
It's nice to know how the other people work because they do things differently than us. Just the cohesion with the other nation. It's the communication, is like in the real world, like we're going to be prepared to work with the other country and get the mission accomplished.
We dropped international bundles for the first time. The drops went extremely well. Mobility Guardian is teaching me a lot about things I didn't realize that I needed to know. I'm definitely enjoying the experience that I'm getting. My favorite part so far has been getting to just work with different crews, getting to know different people and learn about their career fields.
Yeah, the ground wasn't as soft as I'm used to. I'm aware it's primarily an Air Force exercise. My job would be pack on my shoe, get my ruck ready, and go find a door bundle. We kick out the aircraft. So it's probably about 200 meters down that way. So my job's to go, link up with my team, go down there, set it up, and just wait for some fire missions. I love it. Probably the best thing I've done in my career so far.
Being such a small group and a small squadron, we don't often get multiple tankers airborne to fly together. So to be able to come here and associate with other tanker types and other tanker aircrew to find out how they operate, learning points out of that. The importance of our coalition is really important to us for both operations and exercises. So we need to train in exercises so that we can perform to our highest ability on operation.
As air medical evacuation, we only see our small piece of the mission.
On your command, you're going to lower to the ground.
But coming out here gives us the opportunity to see like the airdrops and people forward deploying. So I think it's pretty cool to actually see something a little bit bigger than what we do at home station.
Every jump is different. In this jump, we learn the new brotherhood and the new fraternal with your country, with the USA Army and the USA Air Force, and new friends, and we keep with the French, Pakistan, and Mexico, I hope I come back again.
I think the most important thing we can do when we have as many partner nations in this exercise policy is try to integrate them into all facets of it. We're able to have British and New Zealand partners, steer guys out here with us as well. They just bring a whole new attitude, accent, and experience to the table.
We had earlier an Australian crew chief for the KC-30 come by, and he told us about his job and how them as Australians have actually refilled American planes. And that just kind of puts, I don't know, the bigger picture, paints the bigger picture. Like, we're not the only people in this fight and that we actually do collaborate.
I came in 1951 and I stayed until 1976. I was in an office where we built the firing tables for the Army weapons systems. And I had been teaching school for 4 years and I was content, but my goodness, I came down here and got a tremendous increase in pay, and that was $3,100 a year.
Well, the first part of my career, I worked as an analyst. My title was research mathematician. And you know the expression, if you enjoy your work, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, that was the way it was for me.
My college guidance counselor saw the job posted in the local post office in Norfolk. Got a hold of an application, got a phone call, came up for an interview, and was selected for the job.
And I think that was the main thrust they wanted me to work on, was how do we put together an effort to acquire supercomputers.
And so I was very happy. I enjoyed my job. It was a nice place to work. The people were wonderful. And to think that there is a computer, which in my day took up an entire room, now that same possibility is on something you hold in your hand. Absolutely astounding.
I knew nothing about computers. It was totally a new thing for me, but I felt I was up to the challenge, and I felt it sounded like really interesting work and a real challenge.
The problem was that supercomputers were costing about $25 million, and you had to get it into the Army budget, and it might not stay there. And so they had a mixed bag effort of trying to get supercomputers, and it hadn't worked. So that was one of my first big tasks, aside from managing the two groups, was how do you put together a program that convinces the Army that BRL can get a supercomputer.
The computers gave us the information that we needed to prepare tables that the troops found useful in the field, and I can remember distinctly people calling up and requesting tables for people in Vietnam. And they were always so appreciative when you got them off the shelf, mailed them immediately, and they had them in a short time.
Well, it gives you a good feeling to feel like you're helping out the soldier in the field, and I wanted to make sure I was accurate with my calculations because I knew lives were at stake.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity for a young person to do something worthwhile for yourself and for the country, and to find a job that is so rewarding. I found it that way, and to this day I'm very grateful to have had this job.
So we went from there, and that was quite a long effort, and that led to effectively what became an Army supercomputer program. And then later I wound up being the Army representative on the DoD-wide supercomputer modernization program that was mandated by Congress.
Congratulations, ARL, on your 25th anniversary.
Happy 25th anniversary to the Army Research Laboratory.
Happy 25th anniversary, ARL.
University University students researching unmanned aerial vehicles visited the U.S. Army Research Laboratory at Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, to discuss their recent findings.
Let's leverage the VTOL capabilities of your typical quadcopter with the fixed-wing flight performance, transit time, efficiency.
The Army reached out to the students to promote collaboration, officials said.
Well, today we invited the University of Maryland and Penn State University to come and present, researchers and students to present on their ongoing efforts on micro-air vehicles.
The students put their UAVs on display during the presentation and answered many technical questions about processors, control strategies, and aerodynamics.
So this is an opportunity for ARL researchers and the students at the local universities to present each other's research and network and learn a little bit about what each other are doing.
The students came to the attention of Army researchers because they had participated in a May 2017 competition at the American Helicopter Society Annual Forum at Fort Worth, Texas.
The students were challenged to design, build, and fly a micro-air vehicle to autonomously navigate a course, identify targets, and safely avoid obstacles and return back.
The lab is also sponsoring 2 of the students for a summer internship program at the Vehicle Technology Directorate.
And so they have extensive knowledge of their ongoing efforts, so it was a good opportunity for the interns themselves to have an opportunity to present in a formal professional setting, and also to get the experience of meeting new researchers that they're not familiar with, but also learn about what these researchers are doing here at ARL.
Avra said he hoped the students also left with a better idea of what the Army is researching.
We are always looking for opportunities similar to this in micro-air vehicles, sensors, vehicle technology, all the disciplines that ARL work on related to helicopters and vertical lift platforms.
Avra's involvement in advancing the local Aberdeen chapter of the American Helicopter Society guides his engagement with outside researchers following the same path, he said.
It's always good to have opportunities to make each other aware of their ongoing research efforts, to also set up collaboration opportunities with ARL through the Open Campus, Open House initiative.
For ARL TV, I'm David McNally.
Back in February of 2017, a European team and NASA announced the discovery of the TRAPPIST-1 system with 7 Earth-sized planets, several of which may have the right temperatures to host liquid water.
This got the entire planetary community excited, as these are prime candidates in the search for life.
There was only one problem. When the team simulated the system, planets quickly started crashing into each other.
That's where we come in. By simulating the system's formation and obtaining self-consistent orbital parameters that are difficult to constrain directly, we found that the system's unprecedented clockwork configuration can keep the system stable for as long as we could run our supercomputer simulations. It turns out that for every 2 orbits of the outermost planet, the next one in does 3, the next one in 4, then 6, 9, 15, and 24.
That's when we realized that this remarkable pattern would produce striking rhythms and harmonies if we could translate the planet's motion into music. So we used a numerical simulation to play a note for every orbit of the outer planet. The next planet produces a perfect 5th, where the higher note has 3 cycles for every 2 of the lower note. What you're hearing are the actual orbital frequencies, sped up into the human hearing range.
You might notice that some of the notes are not exactly in tune. That's actually because the system has been losing its initial tuning over the last several billion years due to the same types of tidal forces that the Moon exerts on the Earth.
Next, we added a drum for each time a planet passes its outer neighbor. That's when they really communicate with each other gravitationally, keeping themselves locked in a tight repeating pattern. We took the stars' observed brightness variations and sped those up so you can hear the sound of sunspots and solar flares.
It seems somehow poetic that the same clockwork configuration that allows us to generate this great music can at the same time be responsible for the system remaining stable long enough for us to see it today.
In this video, I'm going to show you how to define a grid using the FR unit. The FR unit is a new unit created for CSS grid layout. With it, you can create flexible grids without needing to calculate percentages, because what this unit does is it represents a fraction of the available space in the grid container. I've got a grid here, and it's defined using pixels. You can see we've got 3 tracks here, all of 200 pixels. And of course that means that the grid isn't flexible. It doesn't respond to the size of the viewport or the container that it's in. It would be nice if we could create a grid with tracks that grow and flex with the available space. So let's do that with the FR unit. So I change my 200 pixels to 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. And I now have a 3-column grid, but the columns are flexible and they're equal sized. And grid's also accounting for this fixed gap here. So when it's working out the space in the container, it's first taking away the fact that we need to have this gap, and then it assigns the rest of the space across the tracks. So 1 FR means 1 fraction unit of the available space. The available space is divided into 3 and shared out equally. But we can change this fraction value. We could change this first track to 2. So now our space is divided into 4. 2 parts of the available space are given to this first track, and 1 part each to these. Now the nice thing about these fraction units is that because they deal with available space left over, you can mix absolute size tracks and fraction unit size tracks, and it will just cope with that. So this final track, let's change this one to 300 pixels. So what happens now? This track is going to stay 300 pixels. You can see as we grow and shrink, it stays the same size. The rest of the space, the remaining space in the container, accounting for the gutter tracks, that's taken, it's divided into 3 because we've got a total of 3 units, and 2 parts are given to this track and 1 to this track. So this is really useful. This helps us to define grids that might need to contain some fixed size item, but then also share the rest of the space in proportion.
My name is Philip Long. I am the Chief Innovation Officer and Associate Vice Provost at the University of Texas at Austin.
Okay. Well, you're at the conference this week talking a little bit about learning recognition systems. What is a learning recognition system?
Fundamentally, a learning recognition system is a piece of software and a framework for identifying when students have achieved something that faculty or others in the institution have set out for them to learn, doing so in a way that tries to make it as objective as possible and recording that so that it can be used as a way of justifying the value of whatever achievement it is that they've been awarded. It doesn't mean that they're technology-based. They've been around for hundreds of thousands of years in some ways. Well, early on, if you remember, people used to get, and still do in the military, they get badges associated with achievements of various kinds, some for performance in academic settings, some for performance on the field of battle. So those are recognition systems. It can be done simply in awarding a certificate for accomplishing the various requirements of a course of study. Mm-hmm. What's happened in recent years with the invention of various kinds of digital technologies is those have been effectively digitized, and the processes have been written up as execution steps in a learning sequence that can be tracked in a digital environment. And by doing so, it also affords greater both transparency and visibility to the learning, but it also allows it to be connected to other kinds of digital artifacts.
Is there any sort of standardization going on where you can take things across institutions, across different learning systems?
Absolutely. For a while there was something called the Open Badge Initiative, which was a community-based organization that was trying to standardize the actual structure of the data associated with the elements that are necessary to recognize achievement, who the issuer was, what it was for, what is the evidence that was submitted to be able to judge and be awarded this particular achievement, etc. That group has been merged now with an international software standards organization. That group is called IMS Global, and they do interoperability standards for all kinds of software, primarily in the learning environment. So they define interoperability for how learning tools plug into a learning management system through a standard called LTI, or how information is captured, the events associated with the activities students are doing in a class, how those sensors are described, and how that data is passed on to something else so that everybody can follow the same pattern and therefore that data can move across boundaries.
How do you think learning recognition systems will evolve and affect higher education in the future?
And that's probably the $64,000 question. In some cases, it depends on the sector of higher education you're talking about. They have been traditionally associated with more skill-based activities. And so those programs in those parts of higher education that have a more vocational scope tend to be adopting these things relatively quickly. More traditional research-focused universities have been less willing to step into this space because I think they would say, well, how do you objectively determine that someone has thought creatively? Mm-hmm. And that's what we do in university. We teach creative thinking, or we teach you how to think better. And the challenge is, in fact, just doing that, because in some sense, that judgment is being made by the faculty member in the classroom based on something. And in many ways, this effort is trying to say, well, what can we do to actually extract out the key elements of that? Mm-hmm. In a way that if you brought 50 similar professors together of that discipline and you asked them, did these things indicate that they achieved X, there would be reasonable concurrence that they'd say yes.
Do you think, and this may be overly dramatic talk, mm-hmm. I'm curious, do you think the popularization of badges and certifications could not delegitimize degrees, but could compete with the degree system?
Right. So there's certainly the potential threat of the tower of badges, similar to the Babel of tower that we are familiar with. And it is a legitimate concern, particularly if the attention to the criteria associated with the rubric for assessing whether or not something has been achieved is taken carefully and seriously in how it's being developed and applied. Mm-hmm. I think that the likelihood of that is diminishing even as the potential growth of badging increases, because there has been additional data added to the open badge specification that describes who the issuer is, what the authority the issuer has for making that assertion, if there's a third party that has validated that the issuer is capable of making that assertion. So they're sort of tracing back, if you will, the authenticity and the authority associated with that process, which gives a little bit more credibility to the assertion in the first place. What is more interesting is the potential for the idea that the issuer is no longer just the institution. And that's the idea that the students themselves may be able to issue badges to others based on the extent to which that student judged the contribution of another student to their own work. So you might expect, for example, if you have a certain number of badge points that you can allocate to your colleagues when you're working on a project, and you've really helped me a lot, I could give you X number of badge points, write a description as to why those badge points were earned. That's the criteria. What's the rubric by which I judge that because I was able, based on your help, to do the following, and then issue you something. Mm-hmm. That starts to democratize the process and potentially makes institutions nervous.
Right, yeah. There's a million questions that go along with that we don't have time to get to, but
Sure.
I'll let that one go because, I mean, I find myself feeling ambivalent about it. I mean, on the one hand, it's great it's like music. It's like the music industry. It's great that anybody can make music now, but it kind of sucks that anybody can make music now.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there are people that have emerged out of that that vast horde who turn out to be phenomenally creative, worthy of everything that they've achieved. And yeah, that there's a lot of more noise in the system.
Yeah.
So it improves or increases the need for discernment.
Yeah.
But you can also think of using this in ways to surface work that otherwise has been invisible. The most common example is most faculty are judged by the merits of their publications. Their publications are submitted to peer review processes. The people who do the peer review are, of course, their fellow faculty. But those people aren't rewarded for that work. It's just built into the system. The publisher takes their feedback, uses it to judge whether or not to accept the publication or not. The individual who does that work for that purpose, what do they get? Other than legitimately a contribution to their own discipline. So there's a sense of community obligation. But what if the publisher awarded that individual review points and some sort of quality recognition for the reviews, and that starts to distinguish better reviewers from other reviewers. And if that reviewer could then take that information and present it in their package for promotion and tenure and say, I've been doing all of these reviews, it's taken this amount of time, and here's the value that I've contributed based on the publisher's comments. Shouldn't that count for something?
Absolutely.
Right now, you can't do that.
Yeah. What technology trends do you think will enable student agency in the future?
Well, the biggest one is the thing that's quite the hype these days in the cryptocurrency world, and that's the so-called blockchain. And the reason is that the blockchain can disintermediate or separate the mechanism by which the award of credit and its management can be done independent of the institution. So in the cryptocurrency world, the whole sort of disruption that came along with that is that you no longer need banks to intermediate the exchange of money. People can buy and sell across each other and do it by transferring Bitcoin from one person to another, and there's nothing in the middle. Well, in the blockchain environment for universities and credit, you can imagine credits being awarded and instantiated in a block. That block is part of a fabric that's outside of the institution. They may be a part of it if they wish, but they don't have to be. And since it's been encrypted, it can't be changed, so it has the same authority that it always has. At the time, the value of it and the authority of it is determined when it's written, and it stays with it permanently. So you no longer have to go back to an institution and say, did Joe Smith actually earn this? Well, if they've got a piece of information that's written into a blockchain that says they did, then they did. That's cool. And so there's the question of what sort of impact that will have on the institutions down the road. Is that one that frees them from that responsibility and keeps them from having to spend that time and money and energy doing all that verification? Or does it threaten them?
Is there anything else you want to add that we haven't touched on?
You mentioned earlier about the proliferation of types of certification and such. I think the backstory behind that is the thing that we haven't talked about, and that's the actual pressures from the job market and employers who are struggling to find ways of identifying workers who can perform the jobs they have, and are a bit taken aback at this point by the lack of information a transcript affords them. And now they've built all kinds of procedures to try to look past that and talk to the person's references and other sorts of things. But you can imagine where some of that evidence of their achievement is instantiated in some sort of a record, including actual artifacts that they produced to be awarded that work, which gives the employer a chance to actually see, oh, here's a CAD drawing that they made while they were doing this project, or here is a way in which they tested this particular chemical. That's a lot different than getting a B in chemistry.
That's true. Thanks so much for your time, Phil. Appreciate it.
Spaceship is a 39-foot mobile maker space, and we drive it all around San Jose to bring technology, STEM learning really out into the community. A lot of people don't have access to technology that's created in their very own backyard. We might be at a school, we might be at a senior center or a preschool, or we'll be at a more public event, kind of like you see here today when we're at the Movable Feast, which is where the food trucks come and gather and people can come out for a family night of dining and give people an opportunity to play and make and learn. Okay, 1, 2. So today we're doing green screen photos, and so there's actually a built-in green screen and projection screen inside the vehicle. People can take their photos and then use Photoshop and manipulate the photos that they just created. Okay. 1, 2. There's a monitor at each of the stations and power and ventilation, but otherwise it's all flexible. There's 3D printers, laser cutters, CNC. We have cooking equipment, we have sewing machines, soldering irons, robotics, pretty much anything that you want to be able to make and do programming with, we have available and can load onto the bus.
After you're done, press enter on the prompt.
Enter. Okay, good.
Yeah, good. The responses from the community have been really wonderful. You know, when you don't even have a computer at home and this bus pulls into your neighborhood, it shows that the library isn't just a building someplace far away, that we're here in the neighborhood, we're working with the community to find out what their needs and wants are, and then providing them. So I'm very fortunate to work as the Innovations Manager for San Jose Public Library. I like it, it's pretty cool. It's a fun job, that's for sure. And I get to work with an amazing group of people to build big, beautiful things.
Okay, drag it in, because you're trying to get all that green out of there.
When I look at myself, I don't think I'm somebody who's necessarily going to change the world, but I can make an impact in San Jose. And the more lives that you go out and touch, then the bigger impact we all have. And together we can change the world.
That's good.
In this video, I'm going to show you the repeat syntax for defining a grid. The value of grid template columns or grid template rows is a track listing. So here we have 3 1-fraction unit tracks. We can also use the repeat notation to define this pattern of tracks, which can be really useful if you've got a lot of tracks in your listing. So instead of doing this, we can say repeat, and then inside the brackets, how many times we want to repeat the pattern and what the pattern is. So in this case, it's just 1-fraction unit, and that gives us our 3 tracks again. You can have a track listing here. It doesn't just have to be one kind of track. So we could say repeat 2, 1-fraction unit, 2-fraction units. And we end it with this. We've got 2 lots of this repeating pattern. The repeating section doesn't need to be the only part of your track listing. We could have a track before this section if we wanted. So now we've got a 100 pixel track and then our repeating section. So we still have the same listing, the grid doesn't change. This just allows us to tidy up our track listings, and for more complex grids that can be quite useful. It's much easier to see what's going on if it's a bit neater than if you've got a long string of tracks.
The Aorangi Restoration Trust has a vision of what the forest might be in 50 years' time. Predator controls at the moment in the Aorangi starts with 1080, but surrounding the area that we have 1080 being dropped, we are establishing a trapping program.
We have 25 different groups and individuals trapping around the park.
An essential part of the long-term program that we have is to understand what is happening in the forest. We want to know what the impacts of the predators are. We want to understand the impacts of our pest control. Leading that is Victoria University of Wellington.
So Victoria University works with Aorangi Restoration Trust and TB Free New Zealand. We measure a number of aspects of biodiversity. There's been claims that after a 1080 drop the forest goes silent, but what we found was that within a few weeks afterwards there was certainly no decline in birdsong levels, and 1 to 2 years later, in fact, the amount of birdsong had increased substantially, particularly for bellbirds, tomtits and riflemen.
In the long term, predator-free New Zealand is very much in our sights. I really want to save as much as we can, as quick as we can.
What up, everybody? This is Trevor, and I'm here with this week's rendition of Talkin' Ship, where I give you everything that's happening here in World of Warships. We're coming off of the Wargaming birthday weekend, which we just had. Everyone's super tuckered out. We're going to keep moving on with all of our regular mission stuff that we usually do. So we're up to our next nation, which is going to be Germany. You know everything that's going to be happening. Check it out. Pachow. And after the German weekend, we have this other sweet event going on. It actually technically started yesterday. It is the preparation for UKBB missions. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, back the hell up. Did Trevor just say UKBBs? I said, damn right. We were talking about UKBBs. There's a whole ton of mission stuff for you to do. So much that I'm not gonna waste your time reading it all off. It's also going to appear right over here. And all those missions, once you have completed them, you're going to be getting tons of stuff along the way, which also appears right over here. And after all of that, you're going to be getting yourself some extra containers, a lot of other good stuff like equipment and things. But most importantly, you get the special item that you... Wait. So in that stuff rain, there's something really important that we didn't actually put in there. And that is, with this week, the next following weeks in these prep for UK battleship weekends, we've got these things called blueprints. They're part of one of the missions. With these blueprints, you are going to be able to start jumping up the UK battleship tree before they're even released, which is pretty sweet. So if you get one of the blueprints, like any 1 week, you're going to get the tier 3 battleship. If you get 2 of the blueprints, so 2 of the 3 weeks, you get the tier 4. And if you hit all 3 blueprints, you're gonna get the tier 5 battleship, as well as a special flag that say you've accomplished the 3 blueprint missions. So get that thing out there. It is really easy to do, and it is really rewarding to do, because now you don't have to grind up the line as far as most other people have to. Community question. It's almost time for Let's Battle Tour Ohio. I'm gonna be there, which is gonna be awesome. We've got some other folks like our illustrious video crew who's behind the cameras right now. They're going to be there. We're all going to be hanging out and having a good time at D-Day Ohio. What I want to know is, are you going to be at D-Day Ohio? Go ahead and put that down in the comment section below. I look forward to seeing you if you're going to be there, and if not, hope to hear from you guys anyways. As always, good luck, fair seas, and I will see you out there.